electrochemistry multiple choice questions. What does electrochemistry focus on? Electrical reactions. What is electrolysis? Electrical breakdown. What type of reaction takes place during the process of electrolysis? Redox reaction. Which one of the following is not an application of electrolysis? Crystallization. What is the name of the liquid that conducts electricity during electrolysis? Electrolyte. What is the role of a power supply in electrolysis? Supplies electrons. During the electrolysis, the negative electrode is called the cathode. Which type of reaction takes place at the anode during electrolysis? Oxidation. What type of bonding is broken during electrolysis of ionic compounds? Ionic bonding. What particles are responsible for carrying electric current in molten ionic compounds? Ions. What happens to positively charged ions during electrolysis? Move to cathode. Which of the following substances is not an electrolyte? Sugar solution. Which of the following substances is a weak electrolyte? Ethanoic acid. Which factor does not affect the mass of the substance deposited during electrolysis? Temperature of electrolyte. Which of the following would not conduct electricity in its pure liquid state? H2O water. Which of these metals cannot be extracted using electrolysis? Iron cannot be extracted using electrolysis. During electrolysis, what is the name given to the positive electrode? The right answer is anode. Which statement best explains the use of copper electrodes in the electrolysis of copper 2 sulfate? They take part in the reaction. What happens to the mass of the anode when copper sulfate is electrolyzed using copper electrodes? It decreases. Why is carbon or graphite commonly used as an electrode in electrolysis? Because it is good conductor and inert. Which of the following ions is least likely to be discharged at the anode in aqueous solution? NO3 means nitrate ion. Which of these ions is discharged at the cathode in preference? H plus ion. In the electrolysis of dilute sulfuric acid, which gas is formed at the cathode? Hydrogen gas. What determines if H plus ion or metal is reduced at cathode? Reactivity series. In the electrolysis of aqueous copper 2 sulfate using carbon electrodes, what is formed at the anode? Oxygen. What is the color of the solution around the cathode when copper 2 sulfate is electrolyzed with carbon electrodes? It stays blue. What is formed at the cathode during the electrolysis of molten sodium chloride? The right answer is sodium metal. Which ion discharges at the anode during the electrolysis of molten sodium chloride? Chloride ion. In the electrolysis of brine, the concentrated sodium chloride solution, what is formed at the anode? Chlorine gas. What is a correct ionic half equation for the formation of chlorine at the anode? It's option D, where two chloride ions form one chlorine molecule after releasing two electrons. What is formed at the cathode in the electrolysis of concentrated sodium chloride, brine? Hydrogen gas. During electrolysis of brine, which ion remains in solution? Na+ ion remains in solution. What is the key difference between electrolysis of concentrated sodium chloride and molten sodium chloride? Brine gives hydrogen gas, molten gives sodium metal. What is observed at the cathode during the electrolysis of molten lead 2 bromide? Lead is deposited. What is the color of bromine gas released during electrolysis of molten lead 2 bromide? Brown. What is the charge on a bromide ion? -1. In molten magnesium chloride electrolysis, what forms at the cathode? Magnesium metal. In electrolysis of aqueous copper chloride, what is seen at the anode? Chlorine gas. What forms at the anode in electrolysis of molten aluminum oxide? Oxygen gas. Which process uses electrolysis to purify a metal? Electrorefining. What is the purpose of electrolysis in copper purification? It removes impurities. What is the name given to the process of coating a metal object with another metal using electrolysis? Electroplating. What is the function of the electrolyte in electroplating? To supply metal ion. Which pair of electrodes is best for electroplating? Metal to be plated and pure plating metal. In electroplating, the object to be plated is always the cathode. What happens to copper during electrolysis in electroplating? It deposited at the cathode. Which condition increases electroplating thickness? Increasing time and current. What does Faraday's first law of electrolysis state? Mass is directly proportional to the charge passed. Which of the following is the correct equation for Faraday's first law of electrolysis? M equals Z constant times I times T. What is the value of Faraday's constant in electrochemistry? (96,485 coulombs per mole of electrons). See you again. Bye!